So we have just found out what the 4v5 matchup will be in this year's Eastern Conference first round. It will be the Toronto Raptors versus the Philadelphia 76ers. This is a pretty interesting matchup. In my opinion, this is a series that could go way further than most people think. And in today's video, I'm just going to give it my own prediction on who I think will win the series. I'm going to start the video off, talk about the 76ers. Then I'm going to talk about the Raptors. Then at the end of the video, I'm going to give a prediction on who I think will win the series. Before we get into the video, I ask you to drop a like on this video as it does help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want daily NBA content. Also, if you want to reach my goal of 3,000 subscribers, also drop a comment on this video as I do respond to all of my comments. And play that intro. So to start out talking about the 76ers side, they are clearly the team that is way more favored in a series like this, as they probably should, because they have James Harden and Joel Embiid, who are two top 15 to 10 players in the league. To be honest, that's the biggest positive for the Sixers in the series. They just have way more star power than the Raptors. The Raptors don't have a superstar or a top 15 player in the league, and straight up, if Joel Embiid and James Harden are both playing as well as we know they are capable, this team is going to be really hard to stop. We all know that James Harden in the past has shown a guy who could score 30 points in his sleep, but the only problem is that this season he hasn't been as great. And when it comes to Joel Embiid, he's been as dominant as he ever has in his career. And if I'm being honest, I think it's safe to say and safe to assume that he's going to be dominant in a series like this. Also, overall, Philadelphia is a pretty solid defensive team. They have some really good defenders. They have one of the best paint defenders in the league. But a big loss they're going to face is that Matisse Thybulle will not be able to play away games against Toronto, which is absolutely huge for obvious reasons, because he's the best defender on this team and he's one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. Danny Green is also a solid perimeter defender. Tobias Harris is average. He's not amazing on defense, but sometimes he's solid. Even Tyrese Maxey, when he's fully engaged, is actually a pretty good defender. So overall, I don't think defense is going to be a huge problem for the 76ers. But what might be a problem for the Sixers is the fact that in the past we have seen Doc Rivers just become a terrible coach in the playoffs, making like some terrible adjustments, or just making making no adjustments at all, just doing stuff that a bad coach does. He always does it in the playoffs, literally every year, besides that one year in Boston. And in a series like this against Toronto, who has a top 5 coach in the league in Nick Nurse, this really might be a struggle for Doc Rivers, because Nurse is always going to make adjustments and throw crazy stuff at Doc Rivers, and Doc Rivers might not know how to respond. He might not know what lineup to put back on the floor and stuff like that. So coaching is definitely a concern for the 76ers. Also, another concern for the 76ers is the fact that their second best player in James Harden has been absolutely abysmal to end the year, averaging less than 20 points in his last few games, shooting terrible efficiency, having a bunch of turnovers. He just hasn't looked the same since his first few games in Philadelphia. He has just not been great since his hamstring, and we haven't really seen that prime James Harden as of late. And heading to the playoffs, I don't know how well he's gonna play. If you're a 76ers fan, you would hope he could just switch the switch and go back to normal Harden, but I guess we'll have to see. And to be honest, just in the playoffs in general, Harden has never been one of the best playoff performers, period. I think his playoff badness has been a little bit overrated by people. He's not like the worst. He's not like some absolute choke artist, but he just doesn't he just doesn't play his best when the lights are at his brightest. And versus a team like this in the Raptors, who are one of the best defenses in the league, I think they're a team that could really give him troubles. I wouldn't be surprised if James Harden really struggled in a series like this. I also want to say that I think the Philadelphia 76ers X factor is Tyrese Maxey and Tobias Harris. They need either of those guys to have a really good series, and if I'm being honest, I think it's more likely to be Tyrese Maxey, because Tobias Harris is underratedly one of the worst playoff performers in the league, period. I think Tyrese Maxey is really going to show out this series, and I expect James Harden to have some games where he struggles, because he just hasn't been great as of late, and because the Raptors are such a great defense. I think Maxey's going to have some games where he steps up, and I think if the Sixers do win the series, and if they want to win the series, they're going to need him or Tobias Harris to step up. But But honestly, I think it's more likely to be Tyrese Maxey. To now talk about the Raptors, I think they're a really slept on team in this series. A lot of people like Shaq, for example, said the Raptors are going to get swept in this series. Honestly, I don't see a world where that happens. Even though the Raptors might not have the star power that this Philadelphia team has, Raptors do have some power because the Raptors are arguably the most balanced team in the NBA when it comes to their scoring. They have 5 guys averaging over 15 points, and that's not including the other guys who are definitely capable of scoring over 15 if you really need it. The Raptors are really hard to guard because one day one of their star players could be having a bad game, someone else can easily pick it up. A guy like Pascal Siakam is someone who I think will really do well in a series like this because no one on the 76ers can guard him. Fred VanVleet probably will struggle when Matisse Thybulle is guarding him, but we all know Matisse won't be able to play in Toronto, so in those games I could expect Fred VanVleet to have some good games. Gary Trent is also going to be solid in this series. He's one of the best shooters in the league as long as they don't force him to try and create too much. Scotty Barnes is capable of going off for big games because it's really hard to guard him unless your name is Matisse Thybulle. He averaged 15 points this season. He could definitely go off. OG Anunoby just returned, and he's obviously a little rusty since he just returned, but he's still going to be a huge help. He's one of the best perimeter defenders in the league and one of the best shooters on this team, and he's a guy who can score off the dribble and go off for big games. Sometimes he's inconsistent and inefficient, but if he has one of his good games, he can really hurt the 76ers. Then there's guys like Precious Achiuwa, who doesn't average 15 points, but he's been on absolutely fire from 3 after the All-Star break. He's going to be spacing out the floor, which is going to be really huge for Toronto's offense and just make it way more spaced out and harder to guard. They also have Chris Boucher, who can have those random games where he just hits 3 threes and gets some putbacks. This team just has so much guys who could go out and have a good game for you. That really makes it hard to game plan, because if you lock down Siakam, someone else could step up. If you lock down VanVleet, which I'm not gonna lie, I think there's a good chance that could happen because he's a smaller guard and he's gonna be the main attention from the defense. But so much guys can step up, and that's not an easy team to defend. We also have to talk about the Raptors on defense, because I actually think they are one of the few teams in the Eastern Conference that could actually give Joel Embiid some real problems. We all know Nick Nurse is one of the best coaches in the league, especially when it comes to the defensive side of the floor. We all know the Raptors are running a unique style of basketball where they just put out a lineup of all 6'8" players are taller, and when you just have that much tall people on the court, pretty hard to guard, especially against their length. That's something that definitely can give Joel Embiid some problems, because if you have just Joel Embiid being guarded by just a bunch of 6'8" guys, you throw a double team at him, it's hard to pass out a double team, it's hard for him to shoot over them. I could see Joel Embiid somewhat struggling, not saying he's gonna average 5 points or something, but instead of averaging a 30 to 35 he would against a different team, maybe he averages 25 points, and that could be the difference between you winning or losing. The Raptors also have plenty of defenders to throw at James Harden, because as I said, nobody is fearing James Harden right now with the way he's been playing, but guys like OG Anunoby, Gary Trent Jr., and maybe even Scotty Barnes are guys who I think could defend them really well. And overall, the Raptors are just a really big group of experienced players. A lot of their main guys have been to the playoffs, so they've been to the playoffs so much that I think you could even call them veterans. I don't think their guys are gonna choke and get nervous. Guys like VanVleet, Siakam, Anunoby, Chris Boucher, and Thaddeus Young are all guys who have been to the playoffs many times. Also, on top of that, the Raptors have the coaching advantage. Nick Nurse is a way better coach than Doc Rivers is, and I think that could be the difference in a series like this. But one question I would have for the Raptors is if their shooters are going to be consistent or not, because if their shooters are hitting their shots, they could be really good, but if they're not, they're really stingy team on offense. But now I'm going to predict who I think will win the series. I'm going to go with the unpopular pick, but I'm going to go with the Raptors to win this series. Even though the 76ers have more star power, honestly, I just don't have that much faith in James Harden to produce at the level the 76ers need him to. He hasn't been amazing this regular season, and even though he was amazing in the past, he always was getting a little bit worse in the playoffs, and I think that should be more magnified in a series like this against Toronto, who has so much great defenders. I think the Raptors are going to come out and play as a unit, and I think they could play really good defense defense on Joel Embiid, and I think the Raptors will win this series, and I think they'll win it in 7 games. I think this is going to be one of the most entertaining series in the first round, but I think this is going to be a series that surprises everyone. It makes people start to appreciate the Raptors and the organization, and I think this series is going to bring up a lot of questions about the Philadelphia 76ers future. Anyways, guys, that's it for the video. Let me know whether or not you think the Raptors are going to go far and actually do this upset. Drop a like on this video to help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want daily NBA content. Also, you want to help me grow 3,000 subscribers. Also, drop a comment on this video as I do respond to all of my comments, and play that intro.